It began as a family feud involving an enormously wealthy woman, her living companion, and an angry daughter. Throw into the mix secret recordings made by the butler, and a scandal of epic proportions has evolved that reaches to the very top of the French government. What did the butler hear, and what will be the effect on a president attempting to implement widespread reforms? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Mike Hanna. France's president tries to silence his critics. Nicolas Sarkozy appeared on French TV in an hour-long interview on Monday. He was meant to answer questions about recent political and economic developments, in particular quell doubts regarding the unpopular proposed pension reforms. But instead he spent much of his time fighting allegations of illegal financing for his 2007 election campaign. The scandal has undermined his government's credibility and threatens to destabilize it. But as Nazanin Mashiri reports, the president strongly denies any wrongdoing.
A chance for Nicolas Sarkozy to set the record straight. In this hour-long interview on prime-time television, he denied damaging accusations he's taken cash from France's richest woman.
Can you imagine me coming to dinner in front of the guests and leaving with money? Can you imagine that one can say that I am a close friend of Mr. and Mrs. Bettencourt because in 17 years, according to the butler, I have been there 2 or 3 times?
He's referring to Liliane Bettencourt, the heiress to the L'Oréal empire. Her accountant claims she illegally donated almost $190,000 in cash to Sarkozy's presidential campaign. In return, she avoided paying taxes. The money is alleged to have gone through Eric Woerth, a key member of Sarkozy's cabinet in charge of pension reform. The president defended his minister, but also suggested he step down as treasurer.
They concluded that never, at any moment, nor in any manner, did Eric Woerth intervene in the tax affairs of Mrs. Bettencourt. He is therefore absolved of any suspicion. There is therefore no reason for me to take the decision to separate myself from him.
Nicolas Sarkozy will be hoping he's drawn a line under this affair. His popularity is plummeting and his government seems unable to pass important economic reforms. Reforms he says are unpopular with some.
When you are putting reforms in place, you disturb interests, you disturb the status quo, you bother a certain number of people. The answer, very often, is defamation. We've been through it.
But the story just keeps getting bigger. There have been a number of police raids, including this one at a Paris office of one of Liliane Bettencourt's employees. And on Monday, police searched the home of Liliane Bettencourt herself. The French are traditionally more lenient on political corruption, but times have changed. Hit by the economic crisis, they may be less willing to forgive and forget. Nazanin Mashiri, Al Jazeera.
Joining me to discuss the topic, in Paris, Samuel Laufer, chair of Youth Abroad in the Union for a Popular Movement, UMP, that's the president's party. In London, Jacques Relan, head of European Research in the Global Policy Institute. And in Oxford, Nick Hewlett, professor of French Studies at the University of Warwick. Let's begin in Paris. Samuel Laufer, how seriously is this all likely to impact on the president's legislative programme?
First of all, good evening, Mr. Hanna, and thank you for the opportunity to express myself here. I don't think, personally, and I don't think that people in the popular movement and in the majority believe that the current rumours and false accusations that are being targeted at President Sarkozy and that his minister, Mr. Woerth, are going to have an important impact on our legislative programme and on the pensions reform that we're trying to push forward at the moment. Because I think that the French people are easily seeing now what was true and what was false. And I mean, the IGF, the Inspection Générale des Finances, has just published a report yesterday that clearly said that Mr. Woerth had in absolutely no way intervened in trying to keep Mrs. Bettencourt from paying taxes, like the introducing report to this debate said. And I believe that the French have become aware that this is only a name, this is only a tactic to maybe try to disrupt the president and the government. But I also believe that the French have understood the necessity of the pensions reform. I believe that they know that our pension system is going to go bankrupt within 10 or 20 years if nothing is done. And however unpopular the reform may be, I think it is understood, and that its necessity is particularly understood, and that absolutely no smear campaign or accusations of any kind that are not based on any solid evidence, and none of these accusations are based on any solid evidence, will in any way, shape or form destabilize the president, destabilize Mr. Wirth, and change the way the French citizens look at this absolutely necessary reform.
Well, let's be clear about the actual issues there. The question of possible help in tax evasion, that appears to have been overruled by the government's regulatory authority, but the issue of accepting campaign funding is still something to be resolved. But let's go to Jacques Relan in London and put to you that same question. How is it likely to impact, if at all, on the legislative programme?
I would not be as optimistic as Samuel in Paris there. I think that yesterday the president tried to pose himself as the victim of a smear campaign based on he and Wirth have been the victims because they're trying to impose unpopular reforms. But that's not the case. Wirth and Sarkozy have become embroiled in the Bettencourt story, but it started within the Bettencourt family, and some of the evidence which came out of this trial between the daughter and the mother has been picked up by journalists and has revealed certain practices which the French found very distasteful. Okay, Mr. Wirth has been cleared of interfering in Mrs. Bettencourt's fiscal affairs, tax affairs. But it doesn't mean that it's completely in the clear. As you mentioned, the issue of allegations of illegal funding of the campaign haven't been disproved. And in that case, there's no concrete evidence, but in that case, it's a question of one word against another person's word. And another practice which has made the French people feel very uneasy about this thing, which highlights the proximity between the current administration and the rich and powerful in France. One of them is the fact that Mrs. Wirth was appointed as financial advisor to the richest woman in France as soon as her husband was made budget minister, and there's some tape evidence showing that that was the reason why she got this 13,000 euros a month job. And the other thing, which is absolutely very shocking, is that the man, when he was in charge of the budget, when he was appointed budget minister, remained treasurer of the UMP, i.e. Sarkozy's party. The man who has to decide which taxation was involved has a role to try to gather money for the party. So this story is not over because it has left a little stench in the air of the close, almost incestuous links there are between the current government and the very rich and the big business, and confirms what many people suspected since Sarkozy was elected and decided to celebrate his victory in the Fouquets with the richest people in France, that Sarkozy is more the president of the CAC 40, i.e. the top 40 French stock market index, than is the friend of the people who are currently suffering from the impact of the crisis.
Well, let's just clarify as well that the Eric Wirth, the Labour minister, has now stood down as treasurer of the UMP directly as a result of this, it would appear. But let's go to you, Nick Hewlett, in Oxford. We heard there the allegation that there's an unhealthy stench of money around this particular administration. Only recently there have been two junior ministers who've left, one because of cigar expense bills, the other because of hiring private aircraft. Very much an administration of wealth and ties to a wealthy people that appears to be unpopular, particularly at this time of financial austerity.
Well, I think what you have to understand is that the whole context of the Sarkozy presidency is one where this president was born, brought up, had his legal bureau in a very, very wealthy part of France. He knows some of the very wealthiest people and is good friends with some of the various wealthiest people in France and in Europe. Liliane Bettencourt, who is of course at the centre of this alleged scandal, is the richest woman in France. Now, nothing has been proved, as has already been said, but the context is, as I say, of highly moneyed presidency, if I can put it like that. Sarkozy's brother is one of the former directors of the equivalent of the CBI in Britain, i.e. the Employers' Confederation, and this is a context which is not a good one at the moment. In other words, if something is likely to stick, this is just the sort of context in which there is a danger for the president that it will. In addition to that, and also all mixed up with finance as well, is the fact that President Sarkozy is reputed and has been shown to be highly controlling of the media. This is the president who is the most media conscious for a very, very, very long time. This is a man who is very good friends with people very high up in the media, both in terms of journalism and in terms of ownership of newspapers and magazines. So this is just the sort of scandal which Sarkozy is desperate to avoid at the moment.
Well, let's take a look at the wider context. In less than 2 years' time, France will be going to the polls for the presidential elections. As of now, Sarkozy is eligible to run for a second term in office. But polls suggest his chances of winning are quite low at this stage, with his approval ratings declining steadily, while his rivals Martin Aubry and former colleague Dominique de Villepin have been gaining popularity. This has been attributed to a host of setbacks: a battered economy, high unemployment, high deficit levels, and the unpopular pension reforms aimed at raising the retirement age from 60 to 62 by 2018. In addition, Sarkozy had to deal with internal party disputes, allegations of nepotism, a controversial debate on national identity, and the Islamic veil, issues that perhaps was surprisingly not mentioned in his hour-long interview. But in that interview as well, there was an interesting phrase used by the president. He said, "The world is a village and France has got to compete." He also uttered words of praise for the German economic model. Now, Samuel Lofer in Paris, there is a sense here of overhauling an entire national system. It's not just tinkering with nuts and bolts. It appears to be a wholesale reordering of society as France knows it. Would you agree?
I think that winds of change are definitely and undoubtedly blowing over France, but I think that this is what the French have asked for as well. I believe that voting Sarkozy in 2007, and I mean I was too young to do so, but God knows I would have done so, was a clear sign to ask for change in France, to step out of a huge phase and very, very long-lasting phase of immobility, of stagnation of our country. And I believe Nicolas Sarkozy has taken it forward. Of course, I mean, the country's been hit, but the world has been hit by a crisis. And as much as high deficits and high unemployment figures are being mentioned, our deficits are nothing compared to the one hitting the United Kingdom. And I know that for a fact, being a student in a British university. And the recession, the importance of the recession, has been smaller in France than in Germany. So I do not think that the results that have been brought by Nicolas Sarkozy will be judged in such a negative manner. And if I may add just one quick thing in response to Mr. Hewlett, what he said earlier about a moneyed, wealthy republic. I think on the contrary, Nicolas Sarkozy promised to bring in an irreproachable republic on 6th of May at the Concorde Place and I was there when we celebrated with the French people the victory, with probably hundreds of thousands of people, his election. He promised an irreproachable republic, and it has been delivered, because the Cour des Comptes, the main institutional watchdog to state spending, has been for the first time allowed to monitor the Elysée budget and the spendings of the presidential palace. And the Cour des Comptes is now headed by a man that comes from the opposition. And the two ministers that have been found to have mishandled public money, taxpayers' money, especially in a period of crisis, have been asked to step down. And this cannot be confused with what is happening to Mr. Woerth, because there's no Woerth-Bettencourt story. There's a Bettencourt-Bettencourt story, there's a Bettencourt-Barnier story. For some reason, and I think we will find out that it's mainly political, it has been tried to confuse this and try to bring in the name of Mr. Woerth into this. But it is not the same, and there is no reason why Mr. Woerth should have stepped down.
Well, let me just put that point you made to Jacques Relan in London, Samuel, and that is, we heard there the phrase, irreproachable republic. What's your view of that?
Irreproachable, that was the A, but I would have liked to answer the previous question, but we've talked about the irreproachable thing already. We know that there is no proof, but there's evidence of close links between his administration and due to his background, you know, mayor of Neuilly, where 87% people voted for him in the second round of the presidential election, with the richest ghetto in France. So we know where he comes from. And the thing that Sarkozy wanted to do initially was to make the French people relaxed about money, to turn them into Americans in a way. So it's cool to be rich. And the problem, one of the problems of Sarkozy is that he's been more open than previous presidents. All previous presidents have had contacts with the rich and powerful, obviously, but he's been very open about it, a bit cavalier, thinking that's what it is. The French used to have a very complex relationship with money due to their Catholic and rural and Marxist tradition. Therefore, it's time to make them realize that it's nice for people to make a lot of money. The bling president, that's how it started. That would have worked, probably, if it had been able to engineer the type of growth that the British and the American economy knew in the last few years. But
well, that goes on to that second point, Jacques Relan, which I'd like you to pick up on the issue of, is the society being reformed? Is this movement from the socialism treasured in the early 1980s something that is going to benefit the country, your view?
Yeah, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted basically to follow the Blair agenda, i.e. cut taxes on the wealthy, encourage people to borrow money in order to make money out of their property, etc. But unfortunately for him, he came across the subprime crisis 3 months after he got into power. So his plan to break away with the traditional French model came to nothing as a result. And some of the initial measures he's taken, such as tax cuts for the rich in order to bring them back to France, removing taxes on overtime, which is fine when you have a period of growth, but which is bad when you have unemployment rising, have actually not worked and have had a bad effect on the French economy. The thing that has helped, as Samuel said, the French economy to withstand the crisis better is exactly what Nicolas Sarkozy wanted to break away with, i.e. the French social model, the very high level of redistribution that there is in France, the high level of pension benefits, the 35-hour week, which allows companies to put people on short-time working at certain times of the year, etc. All the French social system has allowed France to actually endure the crisis much better than most of its competitors.
Well, let's just go to Nick Hewlett in Oxford and ask you, Professor, that question which seems to be central. Is the signs of unpopularity by the French president a result of policy or a result of scandal or a mixture of the two?
I think it's a mixture of the two. Perhaps I could just make 2 points, one about policy and another about style of government or style of presidency. The policies, as both my colleagues on the airwaves at the moment have said, are ones which, as described by Sarkozy, were meant to produce a sort of, what, as he described it, as an economic and fiscal shock. which was going to jumpstart the French economy. Now that has gone very wrong in several ways, not least because of the crisis, of course. And this, amongst some people, has been very, very unpopular. The other point I wanted to make was that Sarkozy's style of government is to be all-seeing, all-knowing, all-doing. He was very early on dubbed the hyper-president, the hyper-président. And this is a man who is at the centre of everything that is going on. Now, what happens here, of course, is that if you're at the centre of what is perhaps perceived as good things on a good day, when bad days come, you're also at the centre of that. The French system was once described as a system without a fuse box, because everything goes right to the centre and the whole system blows if something goes wrong.
Well, Jacques Rayland in London, briefly, would you like to pick up on that?
Yes, indeed. The thing, at some point, he was the hyper-president, but lately he has seemed to have lost the initiative. And we could see that, yes, in his own camp, people are getting worried. He's very unpopular, only 30%. It's not surprising that he's very unpopular among the left-wing electorate and among the ex-National Front popular classes who thought that thanks to President Sarkozy, they would be able to work more and earn more. That's not been the case. So it's been very difficult for him. And we've seen he seems to have lost, to be on the back foot now, since the regional elections of this year in March, where he lost to the socialists who a year ago appeared to be in the doldrums. Has lost the initiative. He seems to have lost his touch, and it's worrying very much his own supporters. And we could see that during this scandal, the Worth-Bettencourt affair, he hasn't reacted very quickly. He was slow in dismissing Mr.
Well, let's go to one of his supporters, Jacques Rayland, if I may, and go to Samuel Lofer in Paris, as we are beginning to wind this down. And those points that we heard there, these unpopularity within the party, members of his own party getting very uncomfortable with what is happening with the president. Very briefly, your view, Samuel Lofer.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's only healthy in a democratic environment that concerns can be voiced. But I feel personally, being a member and being deeply involved within this party we're talking about, that divisions or worries within the party are really, do not come anywhere close near the divisions that the Socialist Party is enduring at the moment. I think that our majority, and that includes our centrist, our progressist, our Christian Democrat partners, and the party, the UMP in particular, are very strongly behind President Sarkozy. I don't think he's lost initiative in any way. I think after the regional elections, which were a shock for us, which were a defeat, a disappointment for us, and no one's tried to deny that, he reacted by taking initiative again, by proposing this extremely ambitious and quite widely accepted pensions reform. And I can hardly understand how President Sarkozy can be blamed for not taking enough initiative. And I don't think that the UMP recently has demonstrated a lack of support for the president, for the head of state, for the sort of chief of our political family at the moment in France. I think everyone respects his authority, everyone respects the direction he's trying to give to the party, and everyone will do its best to help him push the agenda that the French have asked us to push forward in 2007.
As always, there is so much to say and so little time in which to say it. Thank you so much to our guests, Samuel Lofer, Jacques Rayland, Nicholas Hewlett.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.